Hi, I'm Mark Sherman. I'll be presenting the School Culture Improvement and Action Plan for Southwest Christian School. Southwest is a private pre-K through 12th grade school with about 250 students. And our mission statement is to offer quality education based on biblical principles taught by Christian teachers for the total development of each student academically, socially, and spiritually. I embarked on this school cultural assessment process by following the steps of this project with the environmental scan, a cultural audit, SWOT analysis, site observations, interviews of 3 different stakeholders, a parent, one of the administrative staff, and a teacher. And it was actually very fascinating to gather all of this information and to really focus on who we are and get that understanding. And then ask the questions, are we doing what we say we do? Do we have any implicit biases? And what steps can we take for continuous improvement and growth toward cultural proficiency? And then how can we leverage what we do as a school for continuous growth and improvement? We began by looking at our racial and ethnic diversity as a school and how we compare to the surrounding community. And as you can see there, it actually lines up in a very similar way. The only anomaly is with the Hispanic and Latino community, and this just prompted the question for us of why is this the case, and what can we do about it? It's the reality, and it's something that we can keep in mind as we look to improve the school, but overall, we were pleasantly surprised to see the diversity of the school matching the community that we're a part of. A couple of great statements that helped really assess the environment. This one by a parent was saying that our families have to meet spiritual requirements, financial requirements, and standards to be in the school in the first place. So it homogenizes it before the students even get to the school. Another interview of a teacher resulted in this assessment that says the school is focused on character as much as content or academics. This is our culture. As we assessed the environment, some of the positives that were recognized were that the focus of our mission statement is on holistic learning, and that is what's happening. The academic, social, and spiritual learning is what we want to see in students, and that's what's going on. The environment itself is very positive and uplifting, and this is largely due to our staff and faculty, having quality staff who will help live this out and then instill it in students. And as a school, competing with a lot of other private schools in the area, we have a good price to value because we are very competitively priced. The biblical worldview, of course, is a distinctive of the school that is who we are. Some areas of growth that came out of this assessment are just recognizing that as a school we could really facilitate the professional learning culture for our faculty, and this would lead to opportunities to address some of the weaknesses and some of the areas where we can grow in cultural proficiency. We can create space in the schedule for teacher collaboration. And then this phrase to insulate but not isolate. We want to help students grow up and be insulated from so much of what's going on in the world. But we don't want them to grow up and be isolated from the world. We want them to be in the world, engaging other people, knowing how to interact with people with a very different worldview, but not be like them, but know how to interact. And so that's really an area that we can continue to grow in. Some conclusions from the assessment were, this is a great quote by John Safiar, that the adult culture is the main shaper of a school's capacity as an organization to learn and improve its results for students. As a result of this, it really informed our conclusion that as a school we need to better serve our teaching staff through professional learning and collaboration opportunities. Smith writes that the key to being a culturally proficient school is having the realization that accepting, appreciating, and embracing differing cultures is an ongoing way of being. And the surveys and interviews indicated that the teachers and administration are willing and open to ongoing reflection and moving toward interaction with students in a respectful and culturally responsible or responsive way, which really shows signs of pre-competence and openness to growth and learning. Another key aspect of cultural proficiency is that it's necessary to have parental involvement so that parent-family populations can feel appreciated as collaborators in the process of educating their children. This really informed the conclusion that as a school, we must recognize that families are key in educating their children. And we need to ask the question, how can we better communicate with and engage them in the process? And finally, cultural proficiency must include an ability not only to recognize and appreciate the differences between and among individuals and groups, but also to interact effectively with those who differ from us. And this is coming back to the thought that we do have a fairly homogeneous population and worldview in our students, and it's by design. We aren't going to change that. But how can we help our students to be, like Jesus said, in the world, but not of the world? Actually, his quote was, in his prayer, he said, "I have given them your word, and the world has hated them, because they are not of the world, even as I am not of the world. I do not ask you to take them out of the world, but to keep them from the evil one." Keep them from evil, but help them to be effective in the world. And that really is our goal. So some of the conclusions, it really boiled down to this one thought, that we need to move from policy to relationships. The guiding principles of cultural proficiency offer a pathway for a school to shift their perspective on change from reforming structures and policies and rules to transforming relationships, interactions, and behaviors of people within the school. It's inside-out reform. It's like what Paul's life example was. He was transformed from the inside out. And that's when deep change is possible, is when individuals and relationships are deep and lasting change can be made possible. So the plan really has these goals to serve all students with equity, to increase family connectedness, to build professional culture through collaboration in professional learning communities, and incorporating cultural knowledge into the classroom. And the actions to make this a reality are to continue to evaluate and to self-assess who we are and identify those who are underserved, to identify implicit biases we may have. We need to strategize. How can we communicate better with families? And we need to be intentional and create time for collaboration among our staff and for professional learning communities to connect. And we need to help teachers actively integrate multiple perspectives into their classroom. And this will address the cultural proficiency guiding principles as you see there on the left. So as I reflect personally on this journey and what I've learned in the class, it was interesting to go back and look at the receptivity scale from the beginning of class. Don't expect you to read all the fine print, except to notice how often I strongly agreed with the concepts. There were just 3 questions that we'll zoom in on here that I had a little more difficulty agreeing with. That first one was just because the statement said that we are in a diverse society, and I didn't feel like the school I'm a part of fully fit that. Although our diversity issues may be a little different than an inner city school of Portland, there is still room for growth and areas that we need to continue to improve on. The next questions really came down to what I see is integrating cultural proficiency through a biblical worldview. And while lack of cultural understanding and historic trust can result in discomfort and disagreements, they're not the only cause. And as our society becomes less Christian, the effects of sin are more and more evident. And we need Christ and we need to follow his example in order to truly be culturally proficient. And that's the same with how we effectively serve all students. There's only so much we can do humanly toward this goal. It's a great goal, but it's a little oversimplified because apart from Christ, true change is going to be impossible. So conclusions, relationships and communication are the keys. For lasting change, leaders need to build strong relationships with all those stakeholders and to be visible, to be a visible leader to teachers, to students, and to parents. The modes of conversation was really a helpful chapter in this course. Learning for myself that I tend towards polite discussion, and I want to get out of awkward discussions and situations, but that's maybe not the best serving of my school, and I need to learn to steer those to a dialogue so that positive change can result. And then finally, recognizing that we can never stop learning, growing, and assessing. And personally, I need to be willing to ask hard questions, or else I'll never become aware of an implicit bias in my life if I don't reflect and evaluate constantly. And this is the process. When I, as a leader, am willing to learn and grow, then I can lead the school towards cultural proficiency. So thanks for listening.